can't keep my energy up without wine. I don't want to feel like I need wine, but I need wine.
There's that. I drink way less now because of David. So I kind of like.
I've been Googling all the sort of life-threatening things that can happen, and like they're all related to alcohol. Like it's so bad for you. Alcohol is awful. And it's so good too.
It's I had a couple glasses of wine on Christmas and I couldn't hang. I had to go to bed. I was so exhausted. I'm like, because I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Warners, welcome to another episode of The Women Your Mother Warns You About, brought to you by Sales Gravy. I'm Gina Tremarco, Master Sales Trainer and Director of Coaching for Sales Gravy.
And I am Susanna Gray-Jones, recruitment strategist and owner of Chime Search. Don't do it.
I didn't.
Don't do it.
I did not chime. I didn't chime in the last episode either.
I know that was hard for you. I appreciate it.
I chime inside of my head. I go, ching, chime.
Yeah, it definitely has a ring to it, right?
It's better than this of like my bell.
Remind me again what that bell's for.
It's for fun. I mean, sometimes like when I'm coaching or when I'm training, if like someone like got, like they had a really good suggestion or they came up with the answer, I'm like, winner, chicken dinner. I know. So
it's the Gina Tremarco Cloud Game Show. We ring if you're right, get 2 rings if you're wrong.
Oh, I love it. I'm excited about this episode. This is part 2 of our 2-part series on hiring and recruiting and looking for a job. I don't know what we're calling all that in 2023, but in the first part of this series, we talked about quiet quitting and quiet firing, and you mentioned the Great Resignation, but these are all phrases that the concepts are not new. They've just been retitled and repackaged and remarketed on the quiet quitting and quiet firing front. And so just as kind of a recap, if you haven't listened to that episode and you're jumping into this one, please go back an episode and listen to that. But quiet quitting, this is when employees are underperforming on purpose to do the bare minimum, because they are not engaged. And so you got to ask yourself. Yeah.
Can I ask you, have you ever been a quiet quitter?
Have I been a quiet quitter?
Yeah.
It's a really good question. I'm like going back through no,
good.
No, because I'm a high performer. And even and I will tell you this, I have been a disengaged employee without being a quiet quitter, just because of my own work ethic. It's just instilled in me. And I talk about this in my upcoming book. I talk about this, like how it was instilled in me to be a worker. So there is that is woven into me, but I could see how it would be really easy to fall into quiet quitting. So
you'd have to be pretty disengaged, right? Because even when I've been leaving jobs, like resigned from roles and I'm working my notice, even then I will still work really hard. Just because I'm just so miserable. I can't see how any quiet quitter could ever be happy being a quiet quitter.
I related some of this back to like a bad marriage, right? Think about, and I know you're in your first marriage, your first and only marriage, right? So, but think about any
first marriage.
Think about any relationship that you've been in that you stayed in, hoping it would get better. And it didn't. And you do become more disengaged or apathetic, right? Like something, because it's the only way you can cope. So sometimes people stay in toxic relationships because they don't have the skill set to get out. They don't know how to get out. They don't know how to break free. And so they stay in it. And
scary, isn't it? Scary.
It is scary. It is scary, but this is a reality. People stay in relationships that are bad for them. And I'm talking about work relationships that are bad for them. They stay because they're afraid to get out. They've become dependent, on the paycheck. Let's think like they might be paid really, really well. And they'll stay for the money, right? They'll stay in that environment because they're not going to make that kind of money somewhere else, maybe.
Yeah. And change scares people. Change really
Yep.
scares people, right?
Yeah.
Is sometimes they go, oh, it's better the devil I know. It's not really going to be better somewhere else. So they have no idea.
Yeah. And then the quiet firing part, oftentimes the quiet firing comes from legally, we can't fire this person. So we're going to manipulate them out of here. And
Yep.
and in often cases, it is intentional, right? I mean, upper leadership might not know it, but a manager might be like, I hate this person. I don't want to work with them anymore. And so I'm just going to make their life miserable. Right? They might even be doing it subconsciously and not knowing that they're doing it. But the quiet firing is also an issue of, and I know we talked about this in the first episode, like how important recruiting is and then onboarding. But sometimes this happens too, which kind of scares people. A new leader is put in charge. And that new leader has a completely different vision of what they want in their division or their department or their way of doing things. That was an issue I had. I mentioned the organization where I took a lateral move and then they promoted someone over me. My attitude was, the disengagement came from, you guys kind of lied to me.
Yeah.
You kind of lied to me and now you put this guy in charge and I had no respect for that person. And the sad thing is that I knew him for years in the industry we were in. And then we ended up at the same company and it was hard for me to respect him. And then he got promoted to be my boss and I was completely disengaged, but I still worked really hard to perform. And we talked about this on the last episode too, about setting the expectations. In that scenario that I was pushed out, they were pushing me on some financial metrics and they're pushing me on, we're really kind of losing money in this area and you're going to need to fire these people. And I'm like, whoa. Can you just give me some directive of like, how much money are we talking about? How much money do you want me to save? How much more money do we need to generate revenue? I was in charge of an entire location. I was in charge of the bottom line, right? So I needed to make sure revenue was happening and that expenses were controlled and that we stopped bleeding in certain areas. But every time I asked for a hardcore directive, he couldn't give them to me. That was a sign for me. I'm like, you still want me gone because I'm telling you, I'm going to perform for you. Tell me where we need to be.
Yeah. But also no one's going to take well to having to do someone else's dirty work if they don't understand why, because then you're merely a robot, right? For that person. Yeah. Like, what is the point? Like, it is hard. And there are some horrific stories that we hear out there by employees who do this kind of thing, where they try and get rid of people and they think that they don't really know, but they know. And it's just nasty. It's just nasty. And it's sad really that we haven't got better in business at supporting our people, making our people feel like they matter most and giving them that kind of, if it's not working, then we want you to come up with that first, not us, empowering our employees in that sense. So it is sad.
Well, where it's truly sad, where I don't think we're getting better is in leadership. I don't think leaders are being trained in a way, right? A lot of times leaders are promoted, but they're not given any training. And there's such a human psychology to becoming a leader. It's sort of, I often equate it to, I love my analogies, like to parenting. Like if you're leading a team, you have to have the skill set. I mean, some of it's innate, but someone needs to teach you how to lead the team.
Yeah. Well, there's that, but there's also many leaders who don't think they need training and they get to them. I've seen it so many times. Like I've managed leaders who they're made for that role. I'm going to get this role. And then when they've got the role, we're like, right, this is the support we're putting in place for you. And they're like, no, I don't need it. I don't need it. I know I'm doing. And then those are the leaders who inevitably alienate their team.
Well, it's so funny you say that because this leader in particular that I'm referring back to, he like constantly bragged about all of his leadership training. He was like, I've been trained in this and this and this, and I've done this leadership training and that leadership training. And I'm like, okay, the fact that you're talking that much about it means that it's an issue. he sucked. But anyway, it led to bigger and better things as it does. So the purpose of today's episode is like you to share with the listeners. And this is also a way to talk about your new podcast.
Yes.
I want to give our listeners maybe some tools, whether they are an organization looking to hire. And I'm hearing this a lot, by the way. If I had a dime for every person I talk to in leadership that is like, do you know anybody? We cannot find any good salespeople. Do you know anybody? I was like, gosh, I should start my own little recruiting firm or send them to Susanna. So there are a lot of people out there who are like, do you know anybody? We need really good salespeople and we can't find them. Nobody wants to work. I'm hearing that. And then there are people that are really unhappy where they're at looking for work. And how do we get these two sets of people together? So this is the Susanna show today, believe it or not. What are some things that, let's start with employers, that employers can be doing to set the stage for talent this year?
Well, I think one of the first things, you're completely right. If I could earn off every candidate who came to me and said, I'm desperate for a sales job, and I placed every vacancy that I had, I found someone for them, I would be so rich. I would probably be able to pay for the rest of my career and just not work. But unfortunately, it is a problem. And I think one of the main things that employers need to do is not panic recruit. I talk about it all the time, but so many employers out there are panic recruiting. You get comfortable. You think your employees are happy. You think no one's going to get ill. No one's going to get pregnant. No one's going to just get a different opportunity and want to leave sales, because it is going to happen. So I always say that companies should over recruit. And if you can't over recruit because you can't afford to, then you need to invest more in your training. And you need to be getting more out of each employee. So the first thing is, don't get to that point. Always have extra heads in case you have that moment of desperation hiring. Because once we get into desperation hiring, the first thing we do, we interview someone and we look at them. And the first question we ask ourselves, without even thinking about it, is, do I like them? Could they be my friend? Could I? And then we think with our heart. We forget to think with our business head, and we take on this person, and it doesn't work out for whatever reason because we didn't do a thorough enough process. So the first thing I would say to employers is have a recruitment strategy. Okay. So make sure that you've got that competency framework. You've got adverts out there. You're speaking to recruiters. Find out what your company's blind spot is, because if Gina's a recruiter and she speaks to my competitors, she knows what they're all saying about Chime Search, my company. She knows what they say I do well, what I could do better. I need to know, where do I stand in the market compared to my competitors? So there's so much that you could do before even doing all of that. Are you on LinkedIn? Do you have a LinkedIn presence? Do people know what it's like to work there? What are people saying about you? Recruitment videos are great, but trust me, I'd probably say about 20% of companies actually have updated recruitment videos of, here's our office, here's our staff, let's chat about it. It's not new, it's been around for 10 years, but there are so many companies who don't show that personality. So I think those are the things that you can do before. What is your ideal employee? What's your ideal B employee? What's your ideal A grade employee? Really important things.
Those are awesome. Those are really good tips. I love this concept of over recruiting versus panic recruiting. You should be over recruiting.
Yeah, because the problem is that so many people are panic recruiting, and the impact that it's having on their existing employees is more treacherous than what could be happening with the wrong employees. So not only do they have disgruntled employees, but then they have wrong employees as well. And then the whole organization fails to meet their targets. And it was one simple thing. They didn't invest in people before they needed to.
Ooh. Okay.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, the attitude is we can't invest if we don't. I had someone on my first podcast, The Pivotal Leader, years ago, who talked about he would hire people for jobs that didn't exist in his organization. And what he meant by that was if I saw someone with talent, I would find a role or create a role for the talent because I knew that that talent could have an impact on the organization. That's a great idea. But for many companies, it's outside of the box thinking and not realistic. And headcount is everything. And so, are they going to bring somebody on into a position that doesn't actually exist? I think progressive companies do that. But how do we get employers to think just a little bit outside of the box and to over recruit? Because when I hear over recruit, I hear hire more people than you need. Am I
Mhm.
mistaken?
That's one way of looking at it. But there's also the way of looking at it of training people up who are
Okay.
extremely new to the industry. So say, for example, in sales, if I know already that I've got some great role models who are extremely satisfied in their role, so I've got people like Gina working for me, then, I might be thinking, okay, well, look, I'm going to maybe get in an apprentice. I don't know if you guys call it the same thing over here, but apprentice or trainee or someone to work alongside Gina, who's not going to cost me a lot of money, who we can give that break to and then develop them in that way. Because that person there's really something to be said about training people up yourself and growing your own, so to speak, opposed to getting experienced people. They tend to be, by statistics, more invested in your company and more loyal than someone who is just jumping for the next big payout.
Yeah, that makes sense. How I refer to that in the past was succession planning. So what my mindset would be in hiring is, do I see that person being able to move into a higher role after I bring them on? I'm not just hiring them for the current role, I'm hiring them for the next role.
Yeah, exactly. So thinking ahead. I think also knowing realistically who's halfway out the door is part of it. And you can do that by doing anonymous feedback questionnaires to your current employees and split it up into sections about whether they feel they're being paid equally, whether they feel the competition, they're getting a good work-life balance. Ask them questions, make it anonymous, and get an overall feel for how content people are in your company. Because I put a poll out on LinkedIn the other day and said, how long do you see yourself staying in your job? And it was so crazy to see how many people said less than a year. Like, do their employees know that? Probably not.
But I want to challenge you on this. I want to challenge you a little bit on this because
go ahead.
I saw that survey on LinkedIn and I think you're going to get honesty there. But when you send out an anonymous survey to your employees, this is just my opinion, the least engaged are not filling out the survey because they don't give a shit. I could be wrong, but I think this is what surprises so many organizations. When I work with different organizations where I'm the coach for several leaders, or even in training, sometimes I can go back to leadership and be like, okay, here's what's going on with Joe, and here's what's going on with Michelle. And they're like, you've got to be kidding. We didn't see that. Why didn't they tell us? So this goes back to the importance of, before we get to the anonymous survey, hoping people are going to fill it out.
Well, no, they have to fill it out, right? It's, that everyone has to fill these out every 3 months. It's part of the job. When you onboard them, you tell them that there's that feedback questionnaire they need to fill out every 3 months.
But you're calling it anonymous. How do you enforce that it happens?
Well, you count your replies. And you have someone in HR who will just check which email addresses have filled out. So you actually have these questionnaire tools that can say who's responded, but it doesn't show you what they said.
True. Again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I think there's some attitude with employees that they get that. They know, yeah, you don't know they're my responses, but it's not really anonymous because you still know whether or not I submitted one. So you could, I've had literally employees say this to me, that they don't trust anonymous surveys, that they think that in some way, shape, or form, we can figure out. And I got to admit that sometimes I could figure out who filled it out without. And so I don't know if you're getting the best responses is what I'm saying.
But if that's happening, aren't they people who are probably on their way out anyway, because they don't want to even put it right by coming clean about things that maybe they're not as happy about?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so what I'm saying is
telling in itself.
Yeah. A lot of times I think those survey results are giving us false hope. That's my point.
So you think that I might say, oh yeah, I love this organization and just like,
and then then you quit tomorrow. And then you're like, I never saw that coming.
Yeah. Yeah. But there are people like that. And there are some people that you can just never anticipate that they are going to leave or not. And that is just one of the reasons, again, why we always need to make sure that if you can't invest in over recruiting, and like you said, you don't have the money to do that, then you've just got to accept that you can't target yourself to grow in the way that you want to each year.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically.
Let's flip the table. So those were tips for people trying to recruit, especially the over recruiting versus the panic recruiting. Let's not get desperate. That's kind of like being in sales and like you take on the worst client because you're so desperate for a deal. And then it ends up costing you money because they use all your resources. And so we don't want to do that. If I flip the table and now I am the candidate out looking for a new position because I'm disengaged, or maybe I was let go because of the economy. I mentioned in the first part of this series that, I saw this woman post on LinkedIn, like all the things she had been doing. And I I felt really bad for her. Like she's doing all the right things and still not finding what she wants. So what are some tips for those who are out there trying to find a better position or they've lost their job and they're now appearing desperate? What are some tips for them?
And that's so hard because I genuinely think if I ever stop being a recruiter, then I'll start up a free recruitment coaching business that's like charity that gives people an hour, because the amount of people who are coming to me at the moment, they say, Susanna, can I have an hour of your time? They're people that I can't really work with because it's the wrong location or the wrong industry. And sometimes they just need someone to coach them through what to do next. And the first thing that I would say to these people would be mindset, right? It's the same as dating. If you think in dating that no one is going to want you and you go on all these dates, and it's likely that you're probably not going to find the right one. So it is turning that mindset around. And part of that is if you haven't got a coach, to coach yourself. Because I would say 9 out of 10 people that I speak to, what they think they want in their next job and what they actually want are really different things. Because Gina might say to me, I just want a role that's going to pay me a lot of money. I don't care about the work-life balance. So I can say, okay, Gina, I've got you this role that's going to pay you, I don't know, 300,000 a year. And you'll say, okay, yeah, I'm listening. But you will have to work 6 days a week. And then you're like, no, actually, Susanna, that's not for me. I'd rather take less money. Like, okay, Gina, so maybe what you said before about money being the most important thing is not quite the case.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah. So give yourself scenarios. And I always think about money, think about work-life balance. What are the non-negotiables? And be clear about what it is that you want. So there's 3 things that I would say that you need to do to make sure that you are putting yourself out there and covering all bases. So one is active jobs. Okay. So the ones that you see on LinkedIn, the ones that you see on Google job ads, the job boards, the active jobs, you want to be all over them, making sure that it is a role that you are looking for and that you can add to, and tailor yourself to each job. So don't send out the same CV and hope for the best. Tailor your CV for this particular role. And when you're writing that letter, the amount of cover letters I see that are so long, no one reads long cover letters. So you want to think about, in the same way as sales, you say, what can I bring to your company? Not what I want a role because I'm looking for a job at the moment and I think I could be really great, blah, 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 blah. Just stop all that and just say, if you are looking for someone who can really make a difference to your organization in XYZ way, this is what I can bring and this is how I can bring it to you. So paint a picture, paint a story. If you've got a quote, if someone once told you that you're the most valuable employee they ever had, pop it into the cover letter. Say, previous employees have said blah, 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 and sell yourself and don't be afraid, because I would say, I don't ever see cover letters that quote what previous employees have said.
No, I love that. That is a great one.
And then I think, so you've got your active employees, but your passive employees, like, I would love to work for this company because of their values, but they're not recruiting at the moment. Don't assume they're not recruiting at the moment, because they might find a job for you if you tell them about you and what you can do. And then there's your recruiters. There's the people who are scouring roles every day. Often they fill jobs before they even put job adverts out. So you want to make sure that you are at the back of their mind. Don't work with any recruiter, because some recruiters they'll make it so transactional. They will just say, send me your CV and they'll get you out. Find the recruiter who spends at least 40 minutes to an hour discovering you and what's important to you and actually caring about what's important to you, which is really important. But using your network. So if I know Gina might know someone who works with engineering and I really want to work in engineering, then I'll say, Gina, can you put my name out there to a few people? It works wonders. So the first part is you have to tick those boxes. But then when you've done that, you've got to stand out. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was a kid, I wanted my first job, and there was this restaurant cafe in Cardiff that I just thought was so cool. I kept going in there and saying, hey, I'm looking for a job. Here's my CV. And they just didn't get back to me. And then I think the next Saturday, I was like, hey, did you get my job? I called up and they're like, yeah. Thanks. Bye. But they were still recruiting. So I was like, what is it about me that they don't want? So I called up again. And I remember hearing the lady say, oh, it's that girl, Susanna again. Hey, we should give her a chance. She's really keen. And then they got me in for an interview because I was persistent. And honestly, if you were going to talk about C's, I'm going to talk about 3 P's: being persistent, being present, and being available, but also being prescriptive about how you can help them. It is really important, because so many people, they think they've got in touch with someone once and that they've got their CV, but actually you have to follow up. You have to be persistent. Same as sales. At the moment, there are lots of job seekers out there. I've often got CVs and completely forgot to respond to them, and shame on me for that, but it does happen. And you don't want that to happen to you. So make sure that you are getting a yes, no, or maybe, because if you don't get anything, then it doesn't mean anything.
I love the 3 Ps. Now we have the 4 Cs and the 3 Ps.
You're going to add another P. Are you going to add another P?
I should. Pushy. No, I'm just kidding. That would be persistent. So,
yeah.
Looking at these 3 different areas, right? Your active jobs, your passive employers, and your recruiters. If you had to pick one path, okay, there's the 4th P. Pick a path. If you were to pick a path, where do you think the highest success rate's going to be for someone out there looking?
I'm going to guess. I know you know, but guess.
I say passive employers.
Yeah, I'd say passive. I was going to say recruiters. I'm going to say that right, because I mean,
you should say recruiters. Because you're a recruiter. I think you should say that. Yeah.
But I think also the recruiters will know which passive companies are most likely to be looking.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said about what you said of passive employees, because there's also something in contacting them directly which shows that you haven't just been told by a recruiter they're a good company, that you've actually researched them and that you
want them. You're interested.
You've been intentional.
Yeah, you're being intentional versus I remember for a bit I was the director of training and recruiting for a hotel, and I would get inundated with CVs and I would want to poke my eyes out, because I would get hundreds and hundreds. By the time I got to the 20th in my inbox, I never opened another one because it was just too overwhelming. So I'm like, all right, something's got to be in this first 20. And I hate to say it, but it's just there's not enough manpower to, and I know there's software programs that can screen all that, but I feel like it's such a tough one going after the active jobs. And this is not something new. It's kind of like the 101 of things of when you go after those that don't appear to be hiring, like to your point, you don't know because they actually might be working with a recruiter and it hasn't been posted. And so you don't know. And I think the dual approach of identifying, I think this is important too for a recruiter to deal with this kind of candidate. If I show up at your doorstep and go, okay, Susanna, this is the kind of company I want to work for. This is the kind of job I want to do. These are the types of companies I would love to work for. I would think that might fire you up to go create the position or find the position.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we come back to the being prescriptive. And I think there's other things you can do, like videos. Okay. Like that will stand out, especially with those active jobs where you can see on LinkedIn now, you can see it's got like 800 applicants. You are in the top 130. You're thinking, oh my gosh, like, am I actually going to stand a chance? Well, connect with that person on LinkedIn, send them a video, and it can be really short. And it could be, hi, my name's Susanna Jones. I just thought I would say I've just sent my application in for your role. These are the reasons I think I could be great for your company. I understand you're probably getting loads of applications, but I would love to be considered for your role. And then, thank you very much. It sets such a sweet, unique impression to that employer.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Whether you're going after active or passive or going after recruiters, having something that's going to stand out with something like a video is definitely going to get attention, and people are going to get a sense of your personality.
100%. I think one thing that people fall down on when they do at least get to that interview stage of a new role is when talking about previous employees. We talk about this a lot, but when talking about previous employees, that they will start with the negative things that they didn't like, and they will dwell on the negative things. And like a really common one might be, oh, I was deserving this promotion and I didn't get this promotion, and I went forward with this promotion and I didn't get it. Well, what's that employer then thinking? They're probably thinking, well, why weren't you good enough to get it? There's a negativity bias. So if you are going to say anything like that, then you can say something along the lines of, these were my goals. We had clear aligned goals, but the goals changed at the company. And because of that, I think that they are likely to counteroffer me if I leave, or, it's likely to be some kind of offer in the future. But for me, their word wasn't there. And that's really important to me in my next company. So you're bringing it back to your values and what you do want, opposed to what you definitely didn't want.
I love it. I think two random stories come to mind. I had a client that I coached for many, many years. I probably worked with him for 5 years. He was at a higher executive level. I helped him transition in his career from company to company in the industry he wanted to be in. And there was one company in particular that was like the ultimate company for him to be at. And it was like, he would go through series of like being laid off, and then going into the next position, and I would help him like create the path. And when it was finally time for him to kind of go his way, it was like when I joined Sales Gravy, and we're still in touch. And he finally got that position that he coveted so much, of like, this was the ultimate company he wanted to work at. And I said, how's it going? And he's like, it's not anything that I thought it would be. I don't like it. So it's a really interesting kind of thing. It was like the thing that he ultimately was working for years to get to as the pinnacle of his career, and found out it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. I think this is something to keep in mind too, that, be realistic with, are you going after a big name logo, which is what he was doing? Is that what you're going after? Because do a little deeper homework on, is that culture aligned with you beyond the big, flashy, pretty logo on your CV?
Yeah. And look on Glassdoor as well. Find out what people are saying. We're so lucky now that we have access to what people are saying. Companies are so much more under scrutiny than their current employees. Like, there's a really awesome sign. If a company, we have it in the UK, you might not have it here. Well, I don't think you do have it there. If you're like, a company's won an award for the 100 best companies to work for by a newspaper, often that's because they've had someone going into that organization and directly finding out what people are saying completely anonymously and, really kind of trying to find that out. And those companies, in my opinion, because I'm speaking and trying to headhunt from everyone all day long, they are the companies that are doing well. So look at that. How much have they grown? Get figures from them and ask to speak to everyone, not just the managers, but people who work there and say, can you speak to 3 people who work there or have recently started? Look for signs and trust your gut. Because sometimes if you feel like if you don't quite see something in somebody, like I once worked somewhere where I thought the woman was a bit aggressive, really kind and nice, was to give me the hard sell, but there's something about it that's very aggressive and not really me. I thought, no, they're paying me loads of money, I'll go and work there. But I was right, and she was not a nice person. So, work for a kind company. Kindness is everything. And in sales, there's not much of it around anymore, but when it is there, stick with it, because those are the people that create the best environments.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Also, protect your turf. Protect your turf when you're searching. And this story goes way, 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 way back to when I was in college, but it's top of mind because I am in the middle of writing a book, and there are different lessons that are sales related. And one of my first lessons, and it took me a while to learn it because I repeated the mistake a couple times. I was trying to get an internship in radio, and I was in a radio copywriting class, and I really wanted to work in radio and television. And so this is back in the day without cell phones. I got out of that class one day. I don't know what inspired me. Something in that class inspired me that particular day. And I went to a payphone where they had phone books in place. And I went through the phone book under radio stations, and I called every radio station in the phone book with, change in my pocket, putting quarters in a phone, and calling every radio station. This is like one of my first cold calling assignments, I think, that I assigned myself, and like literally called every radio station like, hi, do you need an intern for the summer? Hi, do you need an intern for the summer? Hi, do you need until somebody responded and said, yeah, as a matter of fact, we're looking for an intern. And it was like a top radio station in Chicago, and it had top ratings. And I was like, oh my God. And I got an interview, and I was so excited. And the next day in that class, I was like, oh my God. Hey, Randy, I got an interview at this radio station. I'm like, I'm so excited. And then I went in for my interview only to find out that guess who else was interviewing? The guy from my class. The internship actually didn't exist. I created it when I called them, and they're like, oh, it's not a bad idea. We could use an intern. And the next thing you know, I opened my big mouth, and this guy called the radio station too and got himself an interview.
Cheeky.
Very cheeky. So protect your turf.
So did he get it?
No, I got it.
Good.
I got it, but
shame on him. That was your opportunity.
He was really weird. He was a really weird dude. But that was someone who tried to capitalize on my opportunity. So hold some things close to the vest, especially if the job doesn't exist and you've created it by showing your interest. So
yeah, that is true. There you have that is so, but also discretion is key also when you're looking for roles, because there are some companies, especially in sales, who use job boards and they have access to CV databases. So if you're in a role, just be careful about making sure that it is private when you put your CV into other people's hands, because you do not want to end up being silently fired or quiet firing.
Quietly fired.
So true.
Any other final tips before we wrap up this episode? These 2 episodes were fun to me.
So fun. So yeah, I mean, I'm learning from all of these episodes just by, gathering ideas together. I think giving yourself scenarios, knowing in your mind your unique selling point, and that also means your story. So
yeah.
When did you turn an organization into a better one?
Yeah.
What pathway did you take to get them from A to B? And then you send the future employees, employers who may be interested, but also why do they need you? And what is your basic unique selling point to their culture? Find out about their social culture, because you don't get to choose your family, but you do get to choose your workplace. And lots of workplaces consider themselves like a family. So, take that choice, make that choice wisely.
Love it. Love it. These were awesome. These were awesome. We hope that you got something out of this episode. And if you did not hear the previous episode on quiet quitting and quiet firing, please go listen to it. It's the episode before this one. So it would be last week. And for more information about us, go check out womenyourmotherwarnedyouabout.com. And if you are trying to enhance your skills because you're trying to get back out there, or you're trying to be a better sales leader, go check out salesgravy.university. You're going to get the skills there you need with nearly 200 courses, many of them on demand and live with instructors and coaches that can give you some feedback as well. So go check that out, salesgravy.university. Thanks again, listeners. I'm Gina Tremarco. I'm out of here, and say goodbye.
And I'm Susanna Gray-Jones, also out of here.
Nice.
And I just wanted to round up by saying thank you to Gina Tremarco for not making fun of the English accent today in either two episodes. I much appreciate it. Thank you.
And you're welcome. One final note for those who want to go check out your new podcast. What's it called?
The Counter Offer.
The Counter Offer. Go check that.
No, I thought you were going to do it in the English accent, but you didn't.
The Counter Offer. Go check out The Counter Offer. By the time this episode comes out, it might be very close to being launched or already launched. So go look for it. And of course, we will be, as soon as it's launched, you'll be able to find the link to Susanna's podcast in all of our show notes going forward. And who knows, maybe we'll even put it on our website to make it easier for you. So maybe we'll put a little button there that sends them to the podcast. What do you think of that, Susanna?
I love that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, we're here to serve and provide value. Okay, we're gone. I got to go. See you later, Susanna.
See you later, Gina. Ciao.
Ciao.
I don't want to feel like I need wine, but I need wine.